G'day, legends, and welcome to the Celtic Down Under podcast. I'm your host, Jared, and joining me tonight, Shane and Sean. How are you, Shane?
I'm good, thank you, Jared. Doing pretty well.
How are you, Sean?
Going well, yeah. It's t-shirt and weather, t-shirt and shorts weather over here now.
Is that the old grey with the pink V shirt you're wearing?
As yeah.
I've not seen anyone wear that pretty much in my life. So there you go.
I've got the matching shorts and socks as well. Love it.
Of course you do, because you're a full kit wanker. There you go.
I'm absolutely a full kit wanker. I have like drawers full of football shorts and socks.
Had to, mate. Had to.
Have you ever worn a full kit?
Yep. Yeah.
Cool.
I wear it to like football training and stuff. Like if it's the home strip, I won't buy the shorts and socks because I've already got white shorts and white socks there. But like silver kit, I'm not going to wear black shorts with a silver kit. That would just look awful. That would just be too gauche.
Yeah, okay. So I wonder if anyone at Adidas had ever thought of that, considering our kit, this year. Gotta love that. When we wore St Mirren. So, yeah, we'll crack on with the pod. So we could talk about kits for hours, especially with Liam's on here. But yeah, well, he's not. So there we go. But what we'll do is we're going to discuss the game against Hibs. Going to discuss the topic of do we have or are we on the back end of an injury crisis? And then a few other little topics along the way and preview the game against Motherwell tonight. So we'll get stuck into it. So Celtic 6, Hibs 1. I've only watched the game in two different halves, if that makes sense. I didn't watch it live because I had some family shit going on. But yeah, watched it. But that's why I got you boys on. You'll have some more input in the game and everything. So I'll just rattle off a few things there. So the starting lineup we had Joe Hart, Ralston, Carter Vickers, Jens Bernabei, Moy, O'Reilly and Hattadi in the midfield, Giakoumakis with Forrest and Haksabanovic. Overall, in the stats, 20 shots, 9 on target. Possession wasn't as lopsided as it usually is. It was funny. Only 3 offsides each.
Felt like more.
But what was your overall take on the game, Sean?
Yeah, well, I knew when we scored early that we were going to have a comfortable day, an enjoyable day. We've been very consistent this year when we score within the first 20 minutes. We've had 11 domestic games, and 8 of those games we've scored in the first 20 minutes and gone on to be comfortable winners in all those games with a winning margin of just under 4 goals. So when we got that early goal, and Frank McGarvey apparently had said before the game to Postecoglou, get us an early goal today, and so he knew as well. So that's 8 out of 11 we've scored early, and then the 3 games where we've not scored in the first 20 minutes, we've had 2 late winners and a 2-0 defeat to St Mirren. So if we don't score early, we're struggling, and if we can get that goal in the first 20 minutes, then we just steamroll teams domestically anyway. And that's been a pattern this year. And so when we did get it, I was like, yep, we're going to be in for that again today. And I just sat back, poured a whiskey, relaxed, and enjoyed the game from 1-0, to be totally honest.
Yeah, it seemed a pretty comfortable result. Like, we didn't really seem too threatened from what I saw, but what do you think, Shane?
Yeah, much the same as what Sean said. I think probably the word I'd underline is clinical. We generated a lot, we created a lot, but we actually put them away. And it looked like we wouldn't actually miss for a while there. It was very different to what we've seen the past few weeks. But overall, I thought we dominated. I didn't think they generated or created anything apart from that one sort of thrust forward, which they scored from. And that caught me by surprise completely. It was just like, oh, they've scored. Like, what happened there?
Just a counter-attack, that's all that was.
Yeah, it was just so quick, and I'm not too sure who scored. It was interesting when he tried to shush the fans. That didn't go very well. But but overall, I thought it was a really good performance. And if we're getting into specifics, Haksabanovic playing as the 10, I thought particularly in the first half he ran the show. I thought he was excellent. And it was noticeable that he was drifting left. It seemed like a lot of what we were generating was down there, our left, and coming down their right. And he seemed to be sort of naturally kind of picking up sort of areas and pockets of space out that way. And he was just fantastic. I thought he was tremendous. And then the second half, I thought Moy just was as good as I've ever seen him. I thought his passing and vision was just as good as I've ever seen from him. He was exceptional. But look, we didn't really have a bad player on the park, really.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up Moy when we got into the player focus there, Shane. So you've gone early with the Australian connection. Happy days. But yeah, for me, like what I liked was Haksabanovic was dominant out on the left. And Ange said he played him till half time. Like we're up 3-0, not going to lose the game. So let's bring Maeda on and take him off because he was carrying an ankle injury. So made sense. Good game management there. Forrest, name of the podcast, Forrest Fire. He was on fire, that bloke. He it was like it was written in the stars, Score his 100th goal when you've got a guy there, Frank McGarvey. It's just perfect. It was it's good to see Jamesy get out there and have a run. And you know what? I'm loving looking on Twitter this week and just seeing people actually giving him the credit and the plaudits he deserves. He's always been an academy boy. He's always copped pelters online. They're the easy targets, the guys coming out of the academy. So, yeah, it was really it's good to see Jamesy get out there, step it up, play well. And then when he did come off and Abada come on, we didn't lose anything.
I mean, I've said to you earlier in the season, Jared, about this kind of my habitual gambling for the Celtic home games is to put whatever striker's playing on for a hat trick. I don't. Sometimes it'll be a badder and that'll get it as well, though. But I generally just stick with the striker. And so Forrest getting one was good. We do have this habit of getting a player to a hat trick in our home games when we're having a good day. So 100 all time, definitely great. The third one was a particularly good finish. The one, his second goal, I'm not going to give him too much credit. David Marshall should really hold on to that. That was a bit of a
second goal was, you got two extremes. You've got that's like one of the cheapest goals that he will get for 99, and for 100, that was a class finish.
Mm-hmm. And it was straight after Hibs scored as well, so it was kind of like, oh, are they going to get back into this here? And then it was like, no.
He's great. Sit in your corner.
Yeah. Don't worry about it, lads. Have a relax. The most surprising thing of the day was that I don't think I heard the Celtic symphony once, to be honest. Did you?
I thought I heard it early, but I didn't. I'm sure it came up at one stage, but I don't think it was sort of the usual kind of, didn't come across as it usually does.
Mm-hmm.
Shane, I think that one's gone right over your head, mate. Like this, that comment from Sean there.
Oh, sorry. It may not be in the zeitgeist about what's happening in the UK at the moment with the music chart.
The music chart.
No. I do know, but maybe I took it a bit too literally.
I thought they'd be rolling out every 30 seconds after what's happened, but no, they weren't rubbing it in.
I heard it. You could hear it, but yeah, it was pretty much like the normal. I didn't think they went above and beyond, but yeah, still heard it. So
you're expecting a Green Brigade banner, if nothing else. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. But anyway, doesn't really matter there. That's not really our problem for once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I thought Bernabei had a good game as well.
I was just about to bring him up too on my list of players I've got here.
Sorry, I'll let you get on to the players then. Sorry,
this is my fault for jumping ahead.
Boys.
Giakoumakis' second goal, massive deflection, but we'll take it. It looks like when he hits it, when you're watching it live, you're like, oh my god, that's an amazing finish! Like he's absolutely annihilated that into the bottom corner, and then you show a replay, and it's like, oh, that's took like almost a 45-degree turn from the deflection.
Shoot that way, and it goes that way.
Yeah, it didn't lose any pace, but the direction, it's weird, man. Yeah. Like how the deflections, like it takes the keeper out of the game almost to the point where, like, well, why don't people use it as a tactic sometimes? You know what I mean? Like try and hit it off someone at full pace and see what happens. I guess it's too unpredictable.
That's kind of why we're saying like been trying to pass the ball into the net a bit too much lately, and I'm just like, sometimes you just got to have a crack from the top of the box there, because if the teams are sitting as deep on us as they do, and you just like absolutely blast one in there, there's a chance it could rattle off someone, and you could end up with a James Forrest second goal sort of thing that's just bouncing around and you just get onto it and just latch one in, it breaks things down, or you can get a deflection like that. So you said, Sean, you put your money on your normal hat trick for the striker. Well, Giakoumakis was one short for you as well. So there you go.
Exactly.
So,
it was close, yeah. You might have got it if it wasn't for the referee at the end there.
Yep. And then I just want to touch on quickly when we're talking about the goals. Maeda, it was good to see him get on the score sheet after the run. Lack of form we had from him. It was good to see him get one. Didn't celebrate it at all. I think it seemed more a bit relieved that it actually happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't. Yeah, you'd be expecting to score those goals, but yeah, it's good to see. I don't know when was the last time he scored. I'm not even sure.
Last season, I think.
Was that his first this season?
Yeah. It was the first in the league for him that I can remember.
I mean, it was a nice finish, but I think he just didn't have time to think about it. Maybe that helped. I don't know. Well, to be fair, usually when he doesn't have time to think about it, he misses the ball entirely. But but yeah, I think it just fell nicely for him.
It was a nice finish. It was a really tidy finish. When you look back on it, you're like, that's a pretty good goal. But I thought Ange read the situation pretty well. I thought he was like, no, there's a real chance he's going to get that confidence boost by scoring. We look like we're going to put a few past them. No disrespect, but let's bring him on and see if he can get that elusive goal and just help kick him on and you know get the naysayers off the back. You know, get those things out of his head and. Yeah, in the end, he'll look back and go, you know what, that was a pretty tidy finish.
Mm-hmm.
So now we'll touch on a few players. So, man of the hour, James Forrest. Overall, who do you go with when we're playing not just tonight against Motherwell, but on the weekend against Hearts? Do we go with Abada or do we go with the man in form in Forrest?
Well, it just depends on fitness, really, doesn't it? And rotation. Forrest has to start at least one of those games. He's shown just in the last week better form than Abada. And look, I'm not killing Abada. He's only 21. He's a winger. Young players and wingers tend to show inconsistency at the best of times, so that's fine. Look, I'm not annoyed at him. Like that's expected. Yeah, you have to kind of play the hot hand sometimes, and players with experience. Yeah, good to see Jamesy definitely getting back in form, and he could definitely expect to start one of those games, if not both.
Nearly D in the comments is saying this is going to be Jamesy's best ever season so long as he stays injury free. Well, that's the problem he's had the last two and a bit seasons. It's just been injury after injury, stop start. So it's good that he's got a full preseason into him.
Yeah, I'd. Oh, sorry, Sean. Did you want to go?
I was going to say I think that's a bit of a leap, but yeah.
Look, I just wanted to back up what you said. I think you've got to go the hot hand. I think someone nets a hat trick, unless there's some sort of reason that they're not going to start the next game, either fatigue, injury, or so forth. I think you've got to start them. So I'd probably expect him to start. Tonight or tomorrow, and then not sure about the weekend, but when someone's, like I said, put three in the back of the net, I think you've got to keep them in.
That's it. I'm saying it. Rocco Vada on the right tonight, and Jamesy plays at Tynecastle on the weekend. There it is. That's my hot take. It's such a bad hot take that if it comes to fruition, I'll look like a genius.
I think he's done well at Tynecastle in the past, hasn't he? So
yeah, exactly. That's why I was saying it. Plus a bit of experience in that tight, tricky little field they've got there. It's pretty small compared to Celtic Park as well. So yeah, he's been there, done that. You know.
Yeah, we're away to Fir Park, Tynecastle, and Tony Macaroni in the next 3 domestic games. So it's a tricky little domestic run, to be honest.
Get through it with 9 points, so, and we'll be up and about flying.
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember we had this conversation last year at some point. I don't remember. And Livingston was part. I'm sure Tony Macaroni and Tynecastle were part of the conversation at that point.
Yeah, Hibs away. and then it was Tony Macaroni, and then it was Tynecastle. Those 3 in a row was last season's one. I remember that conversation.
Yeah. And we were saying how critical it was, and we came out with 9 points, and then so it was definitely, yeah.
I remember that, Sean, because I said we'd get the 9 points, and all you other boys were saying, "Oh, if we can get 5 or 6 out of it, I'd be happy with that." And I'm saying, "Nah, we're getting 9," and you sort of being laughed at. So I remember exactly which run it was for that reason.
Yeah, I remember the conversation. On the subject of form, when was the last time we kept a clean sheet? What was the last team we kept a clean sheet against? I know the answer. I'm asking you if you remember.
Okay, without looking it up. Geez. 9-0 game, Dundee United.
We had one between now and then.
Oh, yeah. Okay, over to you, Shane.
St Johnstone?
It was Sevco.
Oh, yeah.
So our last clean sheet was start of September against Sevco, and we've conceded every game since then.
Fair enough.
So potentially an issue.
Yep. So let's just jump on to Aaron Moy. Best game, you said you've seen him play, Shane, before, up there. Me, it's like he was rolling back the days to the old game out at, the Olympic Park, Olympic Village, actually, in the, the old FFA Cup. Yeah, he was having a laugh. Like, it was good to see him out there, and he's actually running. He actually had a change of pace about him, so it was good to see. I was real happy to see him get out there and play the way he did, and gave us a different look in the midfield. What was your take on it? Because you'd know him better than me. Come on, Shane, over to you.
Well, I was a bit surprised initially. I know we played O'Reilly sort of at the base of the midfield previously. I was a bit surprised with Moy being in that he wasn't starting there, and that they'd played him basically in the centre of the park with O'Reilly playing in that more deep Calmac role. But he looked better in the centre of the park. He looked like he was just, as you said, rolling back the years. I thought he was excellent. As soon as he got on the ball, as soon as there was space for him to play a pass, he was just constantly looking. There was no kind of I'm passing backwards and then, pass and move. It was literally getting it. And, particularly in the second half when the game did get stretched and they were sort of pushing up and playing really high and there was a lot of spaces in behind, pretty much when sort of before Abada came on and then after, he was just constantly going, righto, I'm just pinging this out left, I'm pinging this out right, and I've got no doubt that he's going to run onto it. And he knew, he was playing, chess whilst everyone else was playing checkers out there in that second half. He looked a class above, and I'm really excited because I think people now kind of see the player that he can be and the role that he can contribute. And I think that, I've been reading a lot of feedback about him online, and people were just blown away by just how good he was. And he finished with 2 assists as well, which is, always a good day's work if you can net those kind of numbers.
Yeah, it's good to see him get that fitness about him. That's where it is. Yeah, and we've got like a comment from Vanessa from earlier in the pod where she said it's great to see Moy play 90 minutes. And then Neely also had a comment here where it's Ange's a meticulous planner when it comes to using his squad. I'm really impressed by how he's integrated Haksabanovic, Moy and Bernabé in such a controlled manner to ensure their success. Spot on, mate. Like, it's pretty obvious he knows what he's doing. And yeah, Moy's come in. He's got his fitness up now, and off to the races we go.
I think that comment... Oh, sorry, Sean, you go.
I was just going to add a bit on Moy, and Jared, I like to call a spade, and I'm looking at my notes from the first half, and Moy's name features a lot, but not in a positive way. So he was great in the second half, but he's getting a lot of praise for that. But he was literally a man down in the first half. I've got like a list of notes. First 5 minutes, caught in possession twice. Carter Vickers hit Haksabanovic on the switch ball 3 times, and then Moy tries to copy it and hits a Hibs player. All kinds of poor play from Moy in the first half, but he was great in the second half when it opened up, when Hibs started to press up. But if you actually do look at the stats and look at the first half in isolation, he was poor. So I think there's a bit of a recency bias, as in he played that way in the second half, so that's what everyone remembers. Where if it was the other way around, I'm not sure. He's getting all the praise.
I'm going to point there just to jump in, and I'll throw to you, Shane. I'm taking your point there, Sean. I understand it. First half performance, second half performance, I get it. I'm looking at it from my point of view. I didn't watch the game live, okay? So I didn't have my notes like you. I knew the result watching it. So for me, I just looked at it from an overall perspective of him, how he's played for us all season. And over the 90 minutes, I still think that's his best overall performance for a whole game for the season. It's still, as you're saying, he wasn't our best man in the first half, but that's the best we've seen of Moyes so far this season. If I'm going to give him a kick in last week, I'm going to give him a bit of a big up this week because he was better. That's the best we've seen of him. But what were you going to say, Shane?
Sorry, I just quickly, I thought he was actually better in the cup game against Ross County. But apart from that, yes, the best game.
Yeah, I didn't think first half he was great. I probably didn't see it as terribly as yourself, but like I watch the game with green and gold specs sometimes, so it's easy for me to get sort of caught up in just the fact that he's playing and knowing that he's going to be going to Qatar and so forth. But no, like looking at my notes, I didn't mention him in the first half. All the notes that I had on him and all the praise and all the exclamation marks, it seems, were for the second half. So, no, I'd agree with that. And look, his game against Ross County in the Cup, I think is a really good shout. That was probably better over the course of 90 minutes. But I think the burst of what we saw against Hibs in the second half was the best that he's played all season, if that makes sense.
I think over the 90 minutes against Hibs, he was a little bit... When in the first half, I think he was more playing a little deeper. And the second half, he played more as an 8. And once he was in the 8, then he looked sharper. So that's why I'm saying that was his best overall game. He's not a natural number 6. But if we can play him in that 8 role where Hatade's been playing, where he can go forward if he needs to, where he can come back and be the second man to help out O'Reilly or whatever in that role, or Abelgard if he's in there, great. But I think that's where he looks the sharpest for us.
I think as well, the fact that he's been moved to the number 8, not because he's better than Matt O'Reilly in that position, but because if you think about the St Mirren game in particular, Moyes' main weakness is he gets caught in the ball. I don't know if I want to call it pondersome. When you're watching it on the game in the screen, it looks pondersome. What he's probably actually doing is waiting for players to make movement in front of him, knowing that he can put the ball exactly where he wants to. And he just seems to have this, think he has more time than he has or whatever, but he does get caught in the ball a lot. And if you're in the number 6 and you're getting caught in the ball at the halfway line, that's a lot different from being out in the number 8 slot in the right. 30 yards from goal, getting caught in the ball, there's a huge difference with those things. And I think that's probably why Postecoglou's put him there. Because that Hibs game with the number 6, he was getting targeted by the Hibs players, and it was a successful tactic for him, and he's not been back there since.
Last player for us to touch on, Bernabei.
Bernabei.
Seeing there's a player there. Quite impressed by what I've seen, especially in the last 2 games. But what was your thoughts on that, Sean?
Yeah, it was much better. Even in the second half with Maeda there, he was, I don't know if they're starting to figure each other out or whatever, but he was definitely much better. And his strength is really his running, isn't it? Like all over the pitch, like not just running forwards, but like when he gets it in defense and maybe even just turns inside and he can just ghost past a player and it just opens the game up, I still think there's a bit of a problem with his forward passing, but his crossing is good and his drive is great. He's strong. He still needs to figure out a few things, I think, but he's starting to show in this game, in the last game anyway, that there's a good chance that there's something there. It's hard to tell, because like any one game you can just be like, oh yeah, he was up against some weak players or whatever, but like he was showing it at the weekend.
What I liked watching him was the fact that him and Ralston tended to work a bit better in terms of both weren't ducking in, trying to be inverted at the same time like we saw last week. Mm-hmm. So that was a good step in the right direction for him. So there was times where I'm looking at it and I'm like, you see Bernabei, he's moving up the pitch and he's like getting up level with where O'Reilly is, and you see he's looking inside, and you see Ralston in the background pointing like, you stay out, sort of thing, because Ralston's already in there, so they're communicating better between them. So I think that made him more of a threat, especially on the overlap. So I think him and Haksabanovic work really well together from what we've seen. Him and Maeda, it's still a work in progress, but it was much better this time around than last time.
Haksabanovic looks so good. But yeah, I know what you're saying, that the overlap, because that was what we were saying about Jota as well, because the St Johnstone game you're referring back to, where they weren't getting their shape right, and where he wasn't playing good forward balls to Maeda. But it's hard to say, do you know what I mean? Like, is it that he's getting the feedback and he's working on it and he's improving? I hope so. Like, we want players at the team that are going to do that. That's how Greg Taylor's become such a good player. That's I don't know. We hope that we would assume that any player that's in the team right now is doing that. Good coaches make good players great players, and so on and so forth. So hopefully the scouting department have identified that there's the raw material there that they can work with.
I just want to clarify what I was saying on the overlap, right? So when we had Rogers as the manager, we had Scott Sinclair on the left who liked to come in, like infield, which allowed Tierney to overlap and go outside. That's what we're seeing with when you've got Haksabanovic. He likes left. He's on the left, but he comes to his right foot, which allows Bernabé outside. And Jota did the same when he played with him last time. When you've got Maeda, who's purely pace and doesn't like to come back inside, he likes to try and beat a man with speed. That's where that was breaking down. But it looked a lot better in terms of overall those two together in the second half. Hope that made sense.
Yeah, no, it does, yeah.
Of course it did.
Okay, cool. I lost track of what I was saying halfway through. That's how out of it I am. Yeah, so I think it's good to see the players are going in the right way. So what we'll do is, before we crack on to the next topic, I just wanted to ask everyone who's listening to the podcast, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to Celtic Down Under podcast in your podcast app. If you're watching on YouTube and you haven't done so, hit that subscribe button. Give the podcast on our YouTube channel, give it a like. If you're in a bunch of Facebook groups or whatever, hit the share button, share it to the Facebook groups, get it out there. We're trying to grow the channel, and we appreciate all your support. Now, we'll Abelgard. I just want to bring him up because Michael's got this comment here. Abelgard is a natural 6, isn't he, Sean?
Yeah, well, allegedly, yes. Not seen enough to really say.
Yeah.
But that's what all the chat is anyway.
Thinking he'll be one better one for us second half of the season once he's had a bit more Sydney Super Cup and all that after that break for the World Cup, because he didn't have much of a preseason. But if he's a natural 6 and he can play in that role, then that will alleviate a bit of pressure there as well. So
the most impressive thing I've seen him do so far was head a ball 50 yards in the air.
What, up, forward?
Like, as in it went 50 yards down the pitch, like
nice.
from a clearance, and it landed in the opposite half. I was like, bloody hell. It was pretty much penalty box to the opposite half. But apart from that, I can't really comment. He's not, he's not had an impact. But we said the same about Bernabé up until this week, so give him time.
So, question for you, which is our next topic. I've seen this spoken about through Facebook groups, on Twitter from random Celtic people, a couple of bloggers. Do we have an injury crisis at Celtic, or are we at the tail end of it? Like we've had so far this season, we've had Starfelt, McGregor, Jota, Abada, Carter Vickers, Itaguchi. Haksabanovic is now carrying an injury. I'm sure there's a bunch more guys that have been hurt. And then it's off the back of last year, where around this time last year, we just had guys dropping like flies from mid-October through to the break for Christmas. Do you think it's a combination of workload and the amount of games we're playing? Do you think it's just unlucky? What are your thoughts? Do we have an injury crisis? And what do we need to do to stop this occurring? I'll throw to you first, Shane.
kind of snuck up on me. I didn't realise sort of how many players we'd had out until I sort of looked at the list and said, okay, yep, and then sort of thought, okay, that's a little bit more than what I would have expected. I don't know if I'd call it a crisis, but if you did, I think the comment about being at the tail end is probably correct. I feel like we're going to get a few players back. From what I was reading, a few of them, Starfelt, Turnbull, Jota, the latter one I'm not too sure about, might be end of October that they're meant to be back, so a couple of weeks' time. There's a few others that, and obviously Itaguchi has just come back as well, after a long injury layoff. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. I think it might be a combination of just the amount of fixtures we have to play, but also not forgetting the kind of system that Ange plays and employs, and that, for all intents and purposes, that we never stop mantra extending onto the pitch. I think there's probably an argument that maybe that's contributing. Whether or not that's the overall factor or if it's just the games, I'm really not too sure. I'm a bit on the fence at the moment.
Vanessa's brought up a point here saying, I think a lot of teams are struggling with injuries, e.g. Hearts and Rangers. I haven't really looked into them too much, but yeah, I think it's probably because the World Cup's at a stupid time this year. There's so many games trying to be crammed in. Like we had to play, I think it was 13 games in an 7 or 8 week period or something like that. And it's the same sort of thing for those clubs, especially the ones who are in Europe. So those two. So I can understand it. And as you said, Shane, we don't stop sending people to the medical room because we go hard.
I think what Shane's saying is right, and it's the two sides of a coin here, and that it's kind of snuck up on him, and that it doesn't feel like as much of a crisis as last year. So maybe there's the same number of players injured. I'm not sure. I'd need to go and look at the numbers, but it certainly doesn't feel the same as last year because we've got more depth and quality this year. But then the other side of that is, like, should we be rotating more? Like whenever they ask Ange, or will you not rotate because of that St Mirren result? You go, well, if I don't rotate, then we can't play with the same intensity they want to play at, And what Vanessa's saying about e.g. Hearts and Rangers, well, if you look Hearts, Sevco and Celtic and say what have those three teams got in common, we're all playing in Europe at the moment. We're all playing in the group stages of Europe. So that's extra games, and it's not just extra games, it's also extra travel, getting on flights.
Less recovery time.
Exactly, all those things, yeah. And so even not even just that, but also like intensity, that higher intensity in Europe as well, or even if you don't think of it as intensity, there's more anxiety, which means more lactic acid for these players. I don't think it's the same as last year. Like last year, we were taking players like Kyogo and Jota and running them until their hamstrings ripped off the bone. And this year, we're taking players like Haksabanovic off at half-time as a precaution. So it's not the same thing, I don't think, even if it is a bit of a stack up. But I would say, again, not done the numbers, but it appears we have less injuries to first-team players than Hearts and Sevco have at the moment. So it may, and I don't think anyone would argue that they're playing with more intensity than us. So I think it might be, the only thing you could say is they had qualifiers to play and we don't. That's the only other thing I would say. Crisis, no. Is it an issue? Yes. Is it an avoidable issue? Probably not, unless we want to play a different style of football.
Okay, so good. What you guys have said is what I'm thinking. So for me, we're not down to the bare barrel like we were last year. So that was at where we're at year 2, more squad depth. We're able to manage it. We're able to get through it. It's fine. People are going to be coming back. There's a comment here from Mahesh where they're saying that Ange said Jota and Turnbull are in the mix for the weekend. And there's another one here from Michael saying, is Haxa injured? Yeah, he's carrying an ankle injury.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got that sort of thing there. But for me, yeah, I just think it's a combination of, all right, so many games in such a short thing, and with the World Cup, and then the other clubs that are also in Europe are struggling. So realistically, I think once we get through the break, get through the European games, get through the break for the World Cup, then what are we doing in Europe? Are we still in Europe? Are we in the Europa League, or are we out? After that, it'll be like it was for us after the Bodo Glimt last season, where let's just focus on the league, and it won't be as bad an injury crisis as it was as well. And just said that he's already working on identifying the players to try and get in early in the transfer window as well. So he wants to hit the ground running like he did last January. So that's good to hear. So yeah, I think add it all up, we're in a better spot than we were 12 months ago.
I don't think there'll be too many players coming in. Hopefully a centre back, but apart from that, I don't really see any desperate needs.
Depends on how long's Kalmak's out for, to be honest with you, and how fit Abelgard is for me. That's the other position there.
Well, Kalmak's supposed to be back after the World Cup. They were saying it was a 5 to 6 week injury, which would put him coming back in whenever it is, end of December.
Yeah, fair enough. So, a couple other things to discuss. How do we all feel about Neil Lennon getting sacked by his team in Cyprus after 7 months in the job?
Did you see what they said as well? Like, something like it'll go down in our history and stuff like that. And we wish, what was it? I can't remember. There was some really weird terms.
Wish you all the best in future endeavors.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, all the best. That's it. We wish him all the best. And it was like writing his name in history. I'm like, okay, he won the cup. If you know, how often have they won the cup? I'm not sure, but yeah, it was a bit of a weird one. Yeah, I'm not surprised, to be honest. And probably Scott Brown will follow soon as well. It's like these things happen. They're ex-Celtic players, so it's a big highlight for us. But for anyone that's not Celtic related, it's just another manager that's lost his job, and it happens a lot.
Yep. I think it's funny though in a way, because like Lenny was in an interview last week and they asked him about going overseas, and the key thing I think is he goes, "Why didn't I do this a couple of years sooner?" And then very next week he got the sack. That's the thing I'm finding kind of funny about it. Like it's like one extreme to the other, but at the same time, it's not funny that someone's lost his job. Only after 7 months.
Yeah. Hopefully we get to see him on Sky Sports sitting beside Chris Boyd. That'd be great crack.
Oh no! I'd rather
well, do you boys think he gets another gig somewhere else?
Let me think about that.
I think it wouldn't surprise me to see his next move, because if he hasn't done it at the level he's at in Europe, and he's saying he wish he went overseas sooner. I was talking before he got that job of wouldn't surprise me to eventually see him down here or over in the MLS sort of pathway. I don't really see him back in Scotland or even in England. He didn't have a good run down there.
A couple of things to consider. One, he's a millionaire, so he's hardly going to take a job at like Falkirk. Do you know what I mean? He doesn't need the money, right? So he's not going to take a job unless it's something that's like high profile. So I couldn't see him take, he could do he's not going to go to Hibs and he's not going to go to Hearts. So you've got, don't think
he
won't
won't Aberdeen. And he won't come with us. So there's 4 of the clubs really out. So who's left?
And look, once you get past those top 6 teams in Scotland, again, you're back to the question of, is it worth his while? The only thing I could see him really going for, and apart from what Jared said, is maybe your kind of sleeping giant in England. Like he was always linked with the Sunderland job, something like that, or Sheffield Wednesday, Barnsley, one of those bigger teams that are down the divisions in England. That's the only thing I could see him coming back to. Other than that, he's just going to chill out, being a millionaire, doing some media work to keep busy. That's it.
Yep, fair enough. So we get to our last major topic before we preview the games. I'm just going to bring this comment up from Michael Downey. VAR is here, everyone. VAR is here. And Michael's comment is Stephen McLean being the VAR officer for Tynecastle has peaked Scottish football bias. So, Shane, VAR over here. What's your take on it?
Big breath in. I'm not a fan.
A-League, what your thoughts are on that, and then we'll talk about it in Scotland.
If you look at it in theory, which is what it's designed for, which is essentially to catch out the bleeding obvious that's been missed, a goal scored, but the ball went out of the touchline or something obvious that's been missed, and you go, oh, geez, how did they miss that? When you look at it for that kind of situation and in isolation as to what it's intended for, it sounds excellent. The problem is, and I've seen it over here, it's become completely hijacked, and every little thing is essentially something that could be referred to VAR if a goal is scored. And look, the obvious ones that everyone talks about and sees, the offsides where they go and they get Microsoft Paint up and draw the lines and stuff like that. And that irks me because it's meant to be for clear and obvious errors. If a guy's, thumb is offside and you have to zoom in and it becomes pixelated, but you see it, that's not a clear and obvious error. So when it's getting used for situations like that, I don't like it because it does take a little bit of the fun out of football. It does. You're kind of looking over your shoulder at the big screen. We've obviously got the big screens down here, which replay the game. And you're sort of looking over going, is there a check going on? Like, is this going to get chalked off? And then the problem is it's being extended to other nitpicky fouls. Like you think of, to give you an example of what I think might have happened.
Boy, Shane, that I can remember. Remember last year against Adelaide? Okay, we're both Melbourne Victory fans over here. And Raimar Chang got regarded for a late tackle. And at the time, ref didn't even call a free kick. And then all of a sudden, they went on and there was another free kick given. And then suddenly it's like, oh, you should come have a look at this. And I'm looking up at where you are and the crowd just going like this to you, like, what's going on? And you didn't even know what was happening. So that situation, it's like, what's this about? So that's the sort of thing for me, like, that annoys me. Varanoia starts now. It's just, back to what you were saying though, Shane, if you want.
Yeah, it's just the net result is it's not the technology that's the problem. It's the people behind the technology. We've seen countless examples of it here where it's been employed poorly. I can recount a very distinct game last year between Melbourne City and Central Coast where a goal was chalked off for a brush that would have been even lighter than the one that Burnaby got fouled or called against for a foul on the weekend. And then, the flip side was later in that same match, there was a clear and obvious penalty missed where the City player basically went studs up on a Mariners player. And, you're like, well, this is going to be clearly overturned when he looks at the footage. He looked at the footage for about 5 minutes and then came back and said, no, there's not enough there to overturn it. And you just sort of sit there and go, what's the system for then? You're not only is it nitpicking and picking up and overturning things that are minuscule, it's then missing the obvious. So it's not the technology, it's the people behind it. And so if you don't have the faith of the people sort of in charge at the moment, if they're behind the VAR, I think having trepidation is well and truly warranted.
The thing that's the best it's going to benefit Celtic. Well, I know it's all Hun referees doing it, but like what we'll get now that we haven't had until now is the benefit of doubt on any offside decisions, and we pretty consistently, Jared, I'm sure you'll agree, Shane, is that every single game we're like, just the game at the weekend there, Hatate scored a goal that was onside and it got chopped off. Do you know what I mean? In VAR, the refs just go, oh, let it play out, and then we'll check it. That goal is
the one thing with that though, Sean, is I love it where they go, if it's close, they're told to keep their flags down and then the VAR can check it. That's pretty much what they're supposed to do. And that will help us because, like, there's been a few games there where I think in the last 2 weeks we've had 2 or 3 offsides incorrectly flagged. So those would have been close. Flag should be staying down. It's when it's obvious and the linesman keeps his flag down and then a defender comes across and clatters someone and then they blow the whistle for a free kick and then they go back to check it. Oh, he was actually offside. So don't worry about that guy over there with a broken leg or a cork or whatever that has to go off and be replaced because he shouldn't have been in that position because he was offside. So we bring it back to that. That's the sort of thing that we see over here as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I've been seeing it as well. And like, you're right. Especially when you're at the games and you don't have like the kind of caught the background of what's happening, you're just like, what's going on here? Like, why are they not going to VAR? Why are they going to VAR? Like, what's actually going on? Then like some time will pass and then it'll come up say VAR check finished, or they'll put a replay up or something, and you'll be like, all right, okay, or oh, okay, what was that for? And yeah, when you're at the game, it is a bit frustrating, and you're going to get a lot of people complaining about that.
Get used to it eventually, but it still doesn't stop you when you sit in your seat and then an absolute cracker of a goal is there and you just jump up going, yeah, going ballistic. And next thing you know, it's like VAR check and it's just going and going, and 3 minutes have passed, and then it's chalked off because this guy ran across in front of this defender and bumped him and he couldn't get across in time and blah, blah, blah. It's some ridiculous thing. It's just does you nut in. It's like they're looking for a reason to take away goals. And what gets people in stadiums gets bums on seats. Goals, excitement, not standing around looking at a screen going, okay, come on now. Twiddling your thumbs waiting.
It needs to be recalibrated. Like there needs to be like an overall kind of stop and go, we need to simply peel this back to clear and obvious. Nobody, I think, would have any issues with it if it was just used for that sole purpose. Was he a foot offside and for some reason the linesman was blinded by the sun? Did it actually go in off someone's hand? If it's used for that and those kind of events, I think everyone looks at it as a very promising development. But when you break it down and go into the nitty gritty and start looking at every incident in isolation, you're taking the faith away from the refs. You're in some ways re-reffing the game from a screen, and that's not what it should be for.
Yeah, I've got a couple of comments I'll bring up here. Strange of the Doctor, Scottish VAR, 6 potato cameras and more cheating Huns to group. Think penalty to Sevco. Sit down, Timmy. And then this one here is what we're just talking about. VAR, buffering. Penalty to Sevco.
Yeah, the 6 cameras thing's a bit weird because where the hell are the cameras going to be? Because there's going to be one to try and do offsides on each half, right? And then what? I guess there'll be like a goal line one as well, and a penalty box one on each side.
One in each goal, on the top of each goal, and they can see it from there for goal line.
So where's your other 2?
They'll probably have them on each side, opposite, off by each dugout, opposite side over there, in case they need a reverse angle.
So I don't know. Like it doesn't sound like enough. In England, they have 33 cameras per game, and I know in Scotland they're saying it'll be the 6 cameras plus the Sky Sports ones for the live games. But like, I mean, really, do you know what I mean? Like, what are the 6 cameras? Is it going to be like a couple of Ring cameras that people have like bought from B&Q and like screwed onto the top of the stadium?
Going like this using the camera phones.
Well, yeah. I don't know, man. But like, I'm trying. When I've been thinking about it this week, I've been like thinking back to incidents that I remember, like, and thinking would VAR have affected that? When you think about like Nair Bitton or Josef Simunovic getting sent off at Ibrox, both of those decisions stay the same, right? The ref can see it; he just made the judgment call. It doesn't change either of those decisions. But on the flip side, when you think about like Lee Griffiths threw on goal, 1 each in the Celtic Rangers game, and Clint Hill comes in from behind and just cuts him in half, and refs just play on. Yeah, like that's a penalty and a red card, like with VAR. Offside goal, like 20 years ago, whatever it was, for Mark Viduka, John Hartson, about 15 years ago. Those stand as goals. Those make a difference, Hearts last year, start of season, when we're 1 each and we score a good goal and it gets chopped off or offside incorrectly, we probably win that game 2-1 instead of losing it 2-1. Andy Halliday probably gets a red card for that studs in the back of Callum McGregor. I don't know, but it's kind of win some, lose some with it, VAR. Like, and it's never 9 times out of 10, it won't be a case of win some, lose some in terms of Hibs players being offside or onside. Like, the teams attack against us so infrequently that's barely going to be an issue against us. Like, same with red cards. We're so far away from getting straight red cards normally that, again, we're not going to be really subject to that. It'll mostly be in the opposite direction where we're the ones that would benefit from that. So I'm hoping it does help.
On that bit there, Sean, you're saying about the cards, where my concern is what it does is it gets an extra set of eyes looking at looking at decisions because we get a bunch of dodgy yellows anyway, right? Ones I think they're 50-50s. We get the card, but the opponent doesn't get the card. Now, VAR's not going to help with that. If anything, VAR's going to look at it and be like, well, actually, he was 0.2 of a second late and a stud hit the inside of the guy's shoelace. So you might want to upgrade that to a red. That's what I'm worrying about. That's where people are saying they're paranoid and stuff like that. That's the thing about it that annoys me. Like, it's the upgrading of stuff, but then it doesn't help if there's just a foul given. The guy in the bunker in the VAR, they can't go, actually, you need to upgrade that to a yellow. It's only from a yellow to a red. And if the ref can still give out soft yellows, then later on, that's where it can hurt.
And look, that's going to come up in the first Celtic Sevco game after VAR, and it was the 2nd of Jan, whatever day it is. And because the refs in those games are very clearly and obviously told before the game, see how long you can go without giving a yellow card. But they're told that, like, because you can tell every single game, they're like, right, the margin for a yellow card is really high in the first half of a Celtic Sevco game. Like, they really want to not be booking players because they know that it's going to get out of control if they do. So we'll see also, I think, in those games where, again, they'll be saying, let's try not to use VAR. And you'll see the kind of that variance where, like, Celtic Sevco games will be like a soft touch on it, like a hands off, but then you'll get Sevco versus St Mirren, and it'll be like penalty to Rangers. And like, and I know we're joking about it, but like it'll be like penalty. Do you know what I mean? Like that will happen.
The only thing I'd say I've been pretty negative on it, and I don't like it. That's probably been pretty well conveyed in this small discussion. But the only thing I was going to say in a positive light, and it's not really a tangible benefit to anybody, but it will kind of expose, like, let's just say there's a dodgy penalty decision given, and the VAR ref says, "No, you've got to come over and have a look at this. I think you've blown up too early. It's probably not a penalty." If someone proceeds and says, no, I'm going to stick with my on-field decision, and the footage quite clearly shows it's probably not a penalty, it's probably going to bring more kind of pressure on the refs in general to get it right. So there might be a little bit of a positive in a sense that it might lead to people going, no, not only you can't use real time as an excuse. You got brought to the vision. It was shown to you multiple times and you still went with your original decision. How could you do that? It kind of takes a little bit of ambiguity away and might put some pressure on getting refs up to speed a bit more. I don't know. That's probably my only positive take on it.
Won't happen in Scotland, Shane, because, the refs will go on strike.
Look, and as a separate point, they should probably be full-time so that they could be spending their days looking over decisions and talking to each other and going, oh, well, this should be like that, and da-da-da. Because sometimes they just don't even know the rules. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's been multiple occasions where the refs don't even know the rules. Like, and that's, I don't want to get into it too much, but there has been.
All right. Well, what we'll do is we'll leave the VAR talk there because I reckon we could keep talking about this for another 20 minutes easy. And then we'll get clipped and shared on, all their follow and all that sort of stuff for a good measure. So if you are one of that mob watching in, thanks for the view and clip away. All right. So Celtic Motherwell, League Cup tonight. We all know how we'll play. We'll be on the front foot. We'll be aggressive. We'll get after it. And because it's a cup game, there's got to be a winner. We don't want a replay. We've got enough games. I don't even know if there can be a replay because of at the moment.
I think so.
So starting lineups, boys. We'll go through who we think will start and our score predictions and any key matchups that you want to point out. So we'll start with you, Shane. Who do you think we'll be starting with?
So I think Seagrass goes in goals this week against Motherwell, I should say. I think Bernabei gets another run. I see a lot of them from Hibs actually getting a run. So Bernabei, Jens, Carter, maybe Welsh instead of Carter Vickers. Maybe I can see some pretty decent changes as well. Come to think of it, I think he'll stick with Ralston. So I'd go with Hart, Bernabei, Jens, Welsh, and Ralston. In the midfield, I think he'll give Abelgard a start. So I see Abelgard coming in. I can see Moy staying in as well, and probably maybe moving O'Reilly back to the 10. Up front, well, we've got Haksabanovic out, Jota's out. You got to start Forrest, Abada, and I think he will probably go with Kyogo. So I've probably got about 5 or 6 changes in there, and I think for a cup game, that's probably not too unexpected.
Sean looks like he's studying the form guide here, trying to figure it out. So what are your thoughts, Sean?
Oh, I'm just looking at the bench from the weekend to see who comes on, and I see Gucci was in there. Abelgard, I think. Siegrist, first of all. He started at Ross County, so he's a stick on the start and goals. Defence, there's usually not as many changes. So the question is, do you keep the 2 fullbacks the same, or do you play them again with a view to bringing Juranovic and Taylor back in for the next 2 games? Because looking ahead past Hearts, that's Shakhtar, and I guess I'm projecting 3 games ahead. And the question is, Ange has got passed for doing this, of rotating when we're already cooked in Europe. So do you think the kind of backups play in Europe a week hence? Or because I think you kind of work backwards from that almost.
I think that's a question for the Real Madrid game. Against Shakhtar, we won't play the backups. We'll have a crack at that and see if we can win. And then see where their cards lay at that. If we're a chance of, if we pick up a point at the Bernabeu, then okay, we go for it. If at that point the other result's gone against us and there's no chance of us getting through, we're going to finish last in our group, then all bets are off. We'll rotate people in at the Bernabeu instead. But yeah, I think the Shakhtar game is there to be played. So what I'm thinking is what you're talking about is, I think we'll see Ralston at the right back, but on the weekend it'll be Juranovic, so he gets a game before the game against Shakhtar.
Yeah. And I think tonight O'Reilly and Hatate will probably come out. They've played a couple in a row. But yeah, apart from that, there's not too many players that really need a rest, I don't think. If you're centre back or you're playing the number 6, you're not doing as much running, you don't really need a rest. So it's more those front 5 positions and fullbacks that you're looking at the rotation more seriously,
Yeah, so for me, I'd be having Siegrist in goal. Ralston will be with the captain's armband. Either him or... No, it'll be him, because I was going to say Taylor won't play. It'll be Bernabeu on the left. So, yeah, the Bricky for skipper. And then we'll have Welsh and Jens together. Abelgard in the middle with Moy and... I have no idea who I'm putting in the 10. Get back to that. And then Forrest. What have we got? Motherwell.
You could have McCarthy in there. McCarthy.
Yeah, we'll put McCarthy in and then play Moy in the 10. Perfect. That'll work. And then, the left, I'll be having Maeda with Forrest the other side. And then up front, we'll be having the big GG.
So you don't think Rocco Vata? No.
I said Rocco Vata early on. If it happens, I actually want to see him get a. He hasn't played before, so I want to see a debut for him. Wouldn't mind him coming on the second half. Let Abada rest.
Surely he's due.
He's been like what he's been doing with the Colts. He needs, especially in a cup game, like it's a League Cup. It's not even a Scottish Cup game. Like, get him in the squad. Him and Bosun Lawwell, put him in the squad. And if we're 3 or 4 up, put him on for the last half an hour. Let him break in. Start to build that pathway from the Colts through to the first team. It's time.
Well, the problem with that, though, is I think there's rules, right, about if he's on the bench, he can't then play for a couple of weeks or something for the B. Is that right? I can't remember.
League, though.
Yeah. I think there's something about... I'm not sure. I'm not 100%. The rules are pretty muddy. I don't know. I would actually... Yeah, if it wasn't for the fact that Abelgard is needing minutes, I would like to see Ideguchi play. Do you reckon could Ideguchi play in the number 8?
Apparently, he can play as an 8 and as a 6. So, yeah, Wouldn't surprise me. You know, we said McCarthy. Maybe Itaguchi will come off the bench. McCarthy plays 60 minutes. Itaguchi the last half hour because he's just back from injury. There we go.
I can definitely see him getting a run against Motherwell. I'm not convinced that he'd start him.
Yeah.
Which one, Gucci or McCarthy?
Gucci.
Yeah, because if you think about just the optics of it, like if McCarthy starts and we go at the cup, that's there's going to be some pretty noisy shouts after that. You know,
he's got a little bit of people off his back after his amazing cameo against St Johnston, right? So people are back on the McCarthy train.
Yep, fair enough. All right, so score predictions. We'll get through our score predictions, then we'll touch on the Hearts game and then wrap up the pod. What do you think, Shane?
3-1. Giakoumakis and Forrest with a double to continue his hot form. We'll concede. It's just, as Sean pointed out, it's pattern at the moment. I don't think we're going to stop that against Motherwell.
I think 2-1, but I don't think it's going to be like as close as 2-1 will suggest. I think it'll be more 2-0 up, make the changes, Motherwell get a late goal, and yeah, something like that.
I was going to say 4-2. I think we'll concede because whenever we've had Welsh and Jens together, we look a little shaky. So there's that. Plus, there's the whole, as I'm saying, if we can get 3 or 4 up, then Ange can rotate in some young guys. And if he brings, say, if he takes Jens off and he puts Lorwell on with Welsh, well, I'm not saying that he's a weak link, but it's his first real time breaking into the first team. So wouldn't surprise me if we concede a little bit here and there. But as long as we win, that's the main thing.
It's a weird kickoff time as well. It's like 6:15 in Scotland, I think. I think they're showing the Celtic game, then the Sevco game, something like that. So I can't quite work out the time changes in my head, to be honest. But it's
11 hours now, Sean, for us over here. So for you, that would be 8 hours.
Is it?
So it's a 4:15 kickoff here in Melbourne.
Because their clocks haven't changed yet, and mine haven't changed.
Clocks have, yeah.
I think I'm still 7, because our clocks didn't change.
Well, we were 10 hours at the weekend. It's 11 hours now. So I think theirs changed on the weekend.
Did it?
In the comments, can you let us know, did your daylight saving again? Please.
Yeah, when's daylight savings change in Scotland?
But yeah, so we'll leave that one there with our score predictions. I think we've all said them. Did you say it? Yeah, we all said it. So Hearts on the weekend. Yeah, there'll be a few changes there, but be back to business as usual. We've discussed with VAR coming in and all that. So let's just go with what our score predictions are. We'll not even bother with our starting lineups. Me, I say we win 2-0. Clean sheet, it's happening.
Yep. I'll back that in. I think now's the time. Probably 3-0.
I'm going to go 4-1.
Fair enough.
Actually, it feels like a 4-1, 4-2 game. Otherwise, steal your 4-2 from protection for tonight.
That's right. Because that was a different game, so we're all good. All good. All right. Just want to let you all know next week's podcast, we're going to go a day early. We're going to do it on Tuesday night. So it'll be me, John, and Liam. I think that's the lineup scheduled. Because I got my mum's funeral the next day. So we're pushing it a day earlier. So my final thought for the podcast is tell your parents you love them, give them a hug, hang on to them and cherish them all you can. Sean?
I'll just jump on that and just say, love you, Mum, love you, Dad.
Absolutely the same. Love you, Mum, love you, Dad.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We appreciate it. Hail, hail, and we'll chat to you next week on Tuesday.
Hail, hail.
Hail, hail.
What's wrong?